lot of energy here for something new. New, new, because the 23 degrees is also new and exciting. The December full moon. You're watching Allastrology. Hello, hello, hello. This is G. All right, we're here. We're going through a chart. Yeah, we got a full moon, guys. It's December 15th. So there it is, December 15th full moon. Does anybody know what full moons mean? It's usually significant, isn't it? There's an increase in the water in the ocean. The tides are usually higher during full moons. There's a reason for that, right? And there is usually an increase in emotions because the full moons are about water energy. Water can seem magical. It's a great conductor of energy. It holds memory. We can feel history. The moon rules the public and more. It is feminine energy, but it's also the public, which is why the emotions of the public, people who work with the public, they'll tell you they know it's a full moon. They don't need a calendar. They know when there's a full moon, right? So it is a full moon in Gemini. You see that? 23 degrees. 23 degrees. So what does Gemini mean? We need to know that. We need to know what the 23 degrees means. And then we're going to need to know where the heck is Mercury and what sign is Mercury in and what kind of conversations is Mercury having with Venus, because they're always talking and communicating. But this is a full moon that is very interesting because it's not just about the Gemini energy. We know that Jupiter is here doing a retrograde right there in Gemini. And at this time, it's at 15 degrees. So that's going to play a role in this. That's going to be a factor because in this chart, Mercury ruling Gemini, it's an always thing, right? Right. But we have Jupiter transiting, meaning it's visiting, it's traveling through Gemini. So we have Jupiter here in Gemini. I'm sorry, my words are getting a little wacky. But if you go across the chart, if you go find Mercury, it's here in Sagittarius. And guess what rules Sagittarius? Jupiter. So what does that mean? If you were to back up the chart, and I know I mentioned this real quickly on another video, but I want to emphasize it again, especially because we're having a full moon in Gemini. The combination of Sagittarius and Jupiter and the Gemini and Mercury, the combination of that, the strong mutual reception energy. So what that tells us is that it's not just about Venus and Mercury having a constant line of communication open. It's about Mercury and Jupiter having a constant line of communication open because they're both sitting at both ends in each other's sign. So Mercury is sitting down here in a retrograde, so it's really strong. And you see the degree that it's at. So if you've been following along, you know that this is where her retrograde stops. She ends her retrograde at that degree. So that's going to be part of the story. The communication, the line of communication is open. And that's what we're thinking about. It's what's in the news. It's possibly what you're writing about. So your mind, Mercury, is activated. We think of talking and we think of social media. So it's communications in general, but that's not all. We also think of the market, the real estate market. So this can be commercial real estate. This can be homes, right? It's real estate in general, but it's also the stock market. Mercury with a Jupiter combination, Mercury retrograding at the other end, which is like, what is Jupiter and Saggy energy? It can go, right? It can exaggerate something, or it can kind of like enhance and build upon something. It adds to something. So that might be a thing here. There might be an increase in home values even. There might be, this stock market that's like, "Holy shit, can we go any high like, what's going on?" Numbers are going higher and higher. Valuations are getting higher and higher. That can be a thing. There can also be an exponentially unbelievable increase of news because it's Mercury and it's Gemini energy and it's at both ends. So many times we've been hearing, well, many times since Mercury got into Saggy, and even before, because we had Jupiter in Gemini, we had a news cycle that was never ending daily, like every few hours. There's whether it's what's going on over there, whether it's what's going on here in the different states and civil liberties, rights, human rights, individual rights, women's rights, abuses of power, courtroom cases, political figures, public figures, influencers, documents, filings, people on Capitol Hill who think their job is to have TikToks and Instagrams and shit like there's just never a never-ending flow of a barrage, like a waterfall of information. So, a full moon is supposed to be an ending, a closure, and like, okay, finally, we've closed the chapter, or we're done with the book. We finished it, which could actually be a thing because Gemini is known as the scribe and the writer. And so there could be some of you out there where you've been using your Gemini energy, or on a regular, you use this energy where you're writing. And if you're not writing, you could be vlogging and blogging. You're doing something where you've got information and you're sharing it, right? Of course, this is reporters and the news, but there's a lot of opinion pieces. There's a difference. Opinion pieces are not news. There's a clear difference between what the Gemini energy is supposed to be doing in Mercury and the difference of that when it's infused with Jupiter energy, which is definitely opinions and judgments. So there's a huge difference there. So if I publish a book, it's my book, right? So it's going to have my flavors and my overtones of my personality and my beliefs. And that's Jupiter energy. Whether it's my religious or spiritual inclinations, my thoughts about the future, there's just a lot there that's really personal, actually. And so sometimes those lines absolutely get blurred with truth because I take my belief and I say, hey, but this is the truth. And so um, that becomes very tricky. And having Jupiter in Gemini, we've had great examples of that for ever since social media became all the rage, especially since most of our news, I don't know for sure, but I think a lot of our news is consumed through social media because Mercury rules this full moon. The degrees of that Mercury energy and the degrees of this full moon, we're going to combine those together to try to get even more details as to what the hell this means. Okay, so we're going to bop back over to Mercury. Sagittarius, so you've already heard me mention a lot of the Sagittarius Jupiter keywords: freedom, truth, religion, spirituality. What about the justice system? What about judges? If we're not just about unconscious judgments, courtroom judgments, Supreme Court rulings. This is this, the judicial system. This is this, okay? With Mercury at 6, that's the Virgo degree. Because Mercury's at 6, and 6 is the 6th house. The 6th house is Virgo, right? You count on your fingers, and the 6 Virgo is number 6, okay? So that's how I got there. And for those of you that have been asking, there's my quick little lesson. That's the shortcut. You're free to join us anytime you like, every Saturday at 9:30 Central Time Zone. That's where I'm at. We do a live stream. You can ask questions there. You can have your chart looked at there. We are a learning community, and a lot of the learning is by looking at each other's charts. All right. Now, with that said, the details, right? Because it's the 6 degrees. Virgo is all about the details, but it's the day to day routine details, the minutia of my daily routines, right? My projects, my tasks, my to do lists, right? I'm writing it down. There's structure and I'm organized because that organizing is setting me up for that long term success. And there's something there about the mundane stuff that's not super flashy. It might not even be in the public eye. Like these are servants. These are the behind the scenes workers. I call them the silent workforce, not real glamorous. These are the people who are cleaning up after you. If you're in a restaurant, your wait staff, right? You sit at the table and someone serves you, right? I know I'm a little heavy on the sarcasm with that. I worked for many years with the public in the service industry. And for the most part, I had good experiences for the most part. But since the pandemic, the horror stories that I've heard, I have just an immense respect for anybody in any service industry at all because it's a thankless job and that people automatically feel that they're superior to you. And that part of my job, yeah, like I said, overall it was decent, but you absolutely would get people who automatically just figured they're smarter than you, they're better than you, and you're just nobody and nothing. And yeah, do you even have a name? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Now, with that said, we can think of how many different jobs that are involved in that, right? But definitely, I think of, you know, we think of who serves us on a regular in our daily world. Sometimes these can be people who are your EMTs, your paramedics, your home healthcare aides, your nurses. So some of those jobs might seem a little bit more, I don't know, they're not out in the field picking vegetables or gardening, right? They're not out harvesting. They're not cleaning the bathroom. They're but they're the essential workforce. They're the essential workforce. So we think of firemen, policemen. We think of that force that if it doesn't exist, remember in the pandemic, the essential workforce, remember those people that okay, those we're trying to mitigate like the spread of something. And so if you aren't part of this force, just do us a favor, stay home because we're just trying to contain this shit. We're just trying to get this shit under control. We're trying to save lives, right? And that's where it was at. It was a global kind of triage thing. So this is all that Virgo stuff. And many times, because it's Mercury, there's communications and talking and even more details with these people, Healthcare, but also the mental health and the well being, the emotional health and well being, the moral injury, the emotional injury, injuries possibly even on the job. Only because whenever we're talking about tasks and projects, and moon energy, because the full moon it's in the mind here. It's in Mercury. So there's something with the mind and the communication, but the level of intellect and something even either very youthful or very kind of senior citizen like, because the degree of this full moon, it's at 23. That's the degree of Aquarius. So if we're at the degree of Aquarius, someone who acts really young, kind of rebelliousness, like the kid in the sandbox almost, even though it's usually people who are kind of like college age, where they're like, trying to establish their independence from mom and dad and like, I'm the adult, I'm the ruler of my own life. You can't tell me what to do. And mom and daddy literally pay for their phone bill and they're driving mom and dad's car. And it's like, oh, okay, but they act really rebellious. They're kind of trying to just establish some independence, right? So it can be that rebel without a cause, which is unfortunate. But we all go through that phase. But it's unfortunate when you have someone who is older and who's still in that rebel without a cause, like the rebelling just to freaking rebel. And that can be difficult because then we come across like these authoritarian type folks who feel as though they're above the law and the rules don't apply to them. And that's where we have that problem. So the part about an ending and a closure and it possibly being, oh, I don't know, an ending to like an authoritarian type of mentality, an authoritarian mindset. Is it possible? Yes, that's possible here. It's possible because it's a full moon. And it is the public that controls all of that, whether we want to own it or not. But when we have that mindset, it is the public's emotions and feelings that literally sway the laws that are written, whether we want to take responsibility or not. So hopefully here that'll be a piece of this, right? This emotion piece within the 23 degrees and within Gemini in general is usually very logical and rational. It is not overly emotional. When you have a full moon in Gemini, it's more like, I don't have my emotions attached to the thing. I can see beyond. I can see a little bit clearly actually because of the fact that Gemini energy is based on like common sense. It's like, but I can just connect these dots. And you saw at the opposite end, you saw where Mercury is at the 6 degrees. Well, she's in the 6 degrees of details and connecting the dots. And that's what Virgo degree is really good at, connecting the dots to see the big picture.
Because the South Node is in Libra at 2 degrees, we definitely have the money degree and the values and desire degree present in partnerships. So I think this likely has to do with businesses. And we've got the law involved in some way because of Libra energy. So possibly Google, and maybe Google losing its monopoly, and likely tech jobs are part of this story as well.
The closure and the ending for you in your life on a small scale, okay? Neighbors, siblings, coworkers, communications with these people, your local neighborhood, merchants, local businesses, even the housing market, right? The values. There's a closure and an ending of some sort. We know the interest rates. Were lowered, right? In the September meeting, I think it was. And either way, as interest rates got lowered, the values on the home prices and real estate in general could increase. And I'm sure I've already mentioned that. But this ending in this cycle can also just simply represent the end of a mindset of the public because the moon represents the public. And 23 is the Aquarius energy, which is groups of people. Now, this is unions as well, union contracts, right? And the markets and businesses, but unions and civil people getting together for like social, I was going to say civil liberties, social causes, right? This is tech and technology, but this is new and different. Other than being like the rebel, it's the new and different attitude. So I've given you a lot of different examples and different things this could be, but don't forget about Mercury being the ruler and it being about your mind and my mind, the mind of your neighbor and your coworker, and possibly the way communication occurred online, possibly the way news is administered online, and maybe some sort of rebranding to channels that are actually news channels as opposed to all opinion pieces. So there's something ending here. And because it's at the degree of Aquarius, there could possibly be a surprise involved. There could be, because it's Aquarius degree. So that takes me then to say, well, what's going on with Uranus? Well, we see it's in values. And look at the degree that it's at. It's at the degree of finishing things. It's the degree of Pisces, of completion, of closures, of even of surrender possibly. But politicians, public figures, high drama, that's the 24 degrees. It is really creative, but authority figures who were awfully dramatic, like, could this be a closure and an ending? I'm hearing from those people. There's a lot of them. We know of one in particular who's always at the top and who's just dominates the news cycle and will do anything to dominate the news cycle, it seems like. So could this be that? 24 degrees and the closure and the surprises at that same degree. And you see that 24 and 23. So this is an uncomfortable feeling, but it involves Uranus. So it's another authority figures. This is an authority figure. This is an authority figure. So is Jupiter in general. So there's strong energy and likely a closure and an ending that could absolutely involve some surprises, definitely of public figures. Could it be the stock market? Um, could it be Jerome Powell and changes? I don't think there's a scheduled rate change for December, but what there is, and I think this day even, I think this is the day of the deadline for those people on Capitol Hill, for our representatives to get a bill passed to make sure the government doesn't shut down. That, I believe that deadline is today or even tomorrow, possibly. So the fact that we have a complete closure and an ending to something and a surprise possibly involved, but an end possibly of the shenanigans, because I'm trying to connect as many dots as I can in the possibilities. Do I think there can be a shock and a surprise and that the government will actually shut down? We'll look at Saturn to see if we can get more answers on this, because it would be a government thing after all. So let's go look at the government. We do have Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto's got the power. We got Capricorn energy. We got Pallas Athena over here at 5, the strategist, right? Cupido's at 7. This is good news, actually. Kaor's at 9. That's good news. Kaor says something new is being created. So even though there was a closure and an ending because it's the full moon, there's a lot of energy here for something new. New, because the 23 degrees is also new and exciting. There's Saturn at 13, no longer in a restrictive retrograde. Saturn is the rules, but it's not retrograding anymore. That retrograde ended over a month ago. It's at 13, and look at the 13 does say something new. A new order, new rules, new contracts possibly. And look, Kaor is right there at 19 degrees. And that 19 degrees in Kaor and Libra is the Libra degree of compromise and of you better figure this shit out. And Cupido is a lot like that Libra energy. Right there at 7 degrees. A lot like the Libra energy, which is we're going to use words to get done what we need to get done. We have a long-term goal, which is structure and order for our longevity, to make government work, but to make it work for the people, ideally. And it's in the degree of Libra, the compromise degree. You see that? It's in the compromise degree. So now that I've kind of taken this back a little bit and looked at this, I feel that there won't be a government shutdown, but I will add that if there is a government shutdown, I think it would be short. I don't think it would be long. Here's some support for that. Saturn's at 13. If you look in there in water, we have Juno at 14. You see that? Juno and Estrella, 14 and 17. So there's some trine energy, some strong bonds, and that's for structure and order. And remember, Saturn rules Capricorn, the structure and the order. Capricorn is very serious, like, okay, the adults are in the room, the kids are in the other room. We're going to get what needs to get done here now. So I feel like this energy can definitely be supportive, and hopefully if there is an end to something that would be disruptive by way of your financial support and your job. This looks very, very positive that it would be very momentary, that it would be very short. So there's a strong sense of new beginnings here, strong sense of new beginnings. But I think the possibility for surprises because of the Mercury standing still and about to go direct here at that 6th degree.
So remember, decisions and choices are likely to change again until Mercury clears her shadow zone, which is after January 1st of 2025.
And the details in the workforce, it's a possibility that the biggest news may come through the public figures, the authority figures, the people in Congress. And I don't doubt that December is going to be, a big news month. I don't doubt that for a minute with Mercury going retrograde in Saggy. Well, Sagittarius is immigration and immigrants. These people actually kept our economy strong. So with that said, if anything, we owe a debt of gratitude. Absolutely a debt of gratitude, because we do. They're our ancestors, maybe not these people specifically directly, but if you think about all the work and blood and sweat and sacrifice that your ancestors put in when they had to come over, you see? So the freedoms in the future and these public figures trying to tell you, fill you with fear, try to find news that's just news. And just be cautious about what we repeat and what we share. You got questions, you comment below. I will see you in the next video. Take care.